Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Make Some Noise, Promote Your Employment Brand Loud and Clear. My name is Claire Alloy, and I'm the Marketing Manager here at Jobvite. And before I pass everything on over to David, I just had a couple of things that I wanted to cover. So first off, you'll notice all of your lines are muted to avoid background noise, but we would love to have your questions for David to cover at the end of the webinar. So if you can use that question box at the bottom of the GoToWebinar control panel, I'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar, and David will answer all of them at the very end. So before we start off, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what Jobvite is in case you're not familiar, and I promise to make this short. But as you see, Jobvite is the modern social recruiting platform, and you can see our four main sections as a recruiting funnel that's turned on the side, and our products that address each of those functions. So from Jobvite brand on the left-hand side, we help you create beautiful on-brand career sites, fully optimized for desktop and mobile, of course, and including tools to improve your employment brand, especially important today, of course. We've got Jobvite Refer and Jobvite Engage. Refer enables your employees to refer all of your open positions through their LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter connections and networks. And Engage supercharges your sourcing efforts and gives you really simple ways to build out campaigns to reach passive candidates. Jobvite Video is our on-demand video interviewing tool to help you screen more effectively and quickly. And finally, Jobvite Hire, which is our applicant tracking system, which allows you to track all of your applicants from application to the offer letter with customizable workflows and easy collaboration for your team and hiring managers along the way. And here is just a quick snapshot of some of our customers, and you can see they span a wide range of industries, and I won't read them all out to you, but hopefully some of them look a little familiar. But with that, I'm going to pass it on over to David, who will give a little introduction about himself before he gets into the content.
Great. Thanks, Claire, and hello, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. A little bit about me in case you haven't worked with me in the past. I'm super lucky that I knew what I wanted to do from a very young age. I've been in the software industry my entire career, and really super fortunate to be successful in multiple roles and working and living all around the world. So you can see my Twitter handle there at @DLakey. If you're into tweeting, feel free to do that. That's one way to get in touch with me, and if you're into hashtags, you can see there on the bottom right-hand corner, hashtag engagement matters. So really looking forward to talking to you today about the importance of your employment brand. I've been at Jobvite for over 4 years now, and I've worked closely with hundreds of companies, and I have to say I've seen the good, the bad, and the super ugly of the recruiting industry, and I hope to share that with you today so you can be better at what you do. So talent is the lifeblood of business today, and the world is now in a digital revolution, and clearly talent is the most important asset of any organization. This new world requires efficiency, collaboration, intelligence to constantly work on a pipeline of talent. In fact, a leading research firm, Gartner, published a study in 2014 that says you must build your organization of the year 2020 today. So therefore, a never-ending recruiting pipeline is needed now for tomorrow. You're probably aware the economy is strong. We've recovered from the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, 2009. As this graph shows, you can see that employment is up, job openings are up, which is really making it more difficult for you to fill all your roles. And the key to filling those roles is using the right tools and the right technology to win what you've probably heard as the war for talent. You know, when you think about the economy and the recessions that we had that go back to the early 70s, you know, one of the things in the early 70s was that the way companies responded to that recession was, instead of laying off people, they cut expenses. In fact, it was taboo even to lay off employees back during the recession of 1973 to 75. If you fast forward a few recessions up to the 2007-2009 recession, the exact opposite happened. And in fact, I was leading the sales team at that time, and what we saw, instead of companies cutting expenses, was they just laid off people, and what that in order to stay in business. And the result of that is that it really gave rise to what Jobvite has coined the term the disposable worker. And the disposable worker leads to when you combine that with a strong economy, it really puts employees in the driver's seat for a number of different reasons. And let's go through some of the main ones on the slide. So compensation turns out to be the #1 reason for employees either taking a job or moving to a new job. And that might seem obvious, but we've actually done some research at Jobvite on why that's the case. And we really believe that it comes down to the fact, because of people experiencing and having experience going through these recessions, that people want to make money while they can. There's no guarantee of what happens tomorrow. We know the economy is not always going to be in a perfect place. So people want to make as much money as they can while they can. So that, on this slide, you see 61% compensation. Then #2 is modern technology. And let's be clear on this. Job seekers are looking at how your company invests in technology. When they walk into your office, they're looking around. Even when they apply for your job, they're looking at your technology to see what it's like to be working at that company. And if you have a poor candidate experience, that's probably going to be the first clue that perhaps maybe your company isn't investing in as much technology as it should. And what does that say about your brand? Of course, we're going to talk about that today. And I'd also encourage all of you to take out your smartphones at some point and actually try applying for a job on your career site. You might be shocked at what happens there, and that's something that Jobvite can help you with as well. The third area that comes up is the work-life balance, and this one's one of my favorites because it reminds me of a story in 2001. You might remember that we were in a recession at the end of the Y2K boom. It's quite as bad of a recession as some of the others that we've had. But I was in negotiations with a CEO, early negotiations with the CEO of the company that acquired mine, and I remember he asked me, he says, well, why do you want to sell your company? And one of the things I said is I was looking for some work-life balance. And that turned out to be a bad answer at the time, given the fact that it was a bad economy. He was actually looking to acquire somebody who didn't want work-life balance and was looking to work really, really hard. And it turns out he didn't get acquired until 2002 to 2001. So be careful when you use the work-life balance thing. Not a good idea to use it in a down economy. So let's, today's webinar is the first of 4, actually. We're going to start at the top of the recruiting funnel on employment brand. And, when I think of employment brand, I think of one of the jobs I had when I was in college. I was going to UCLA, I was living in West Los Angeles, down in Southern California, and I had landed a job as a controller for a small company. In fact, you wouldn't even see it in my LinkedIn profile, but I landed a job as a controller, and I was so stupid at the time. I was just so happy to get the job. I didn't even know what questions to ask when I got the job. And so I'm in the seat for the first week, and I'm all excited about my new role and all the things I want to do with technology in the role. And I start getting these collection calls from vendors, and it crossed my mind that one of the questions I should have asked during the interview process is do you have any cash flow problems? Well, the reason that I tell that story is because if you have a weak employer brand, it's a lot like not having any cash to pay your bills as a recruiter. If you're in that unfortunate situation where you're trying to recruit today and you're an employment brand, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you look on the right of the slide, you can see examples from our customers Match.com and Home24 over in Germany on how they express what it's like to work at the company. And that's really, really key. We're going to dive into that a little bit more on today's webinar. But it's really super important to remember that your career site is the front door to your potential employees. And what impression is that making? You know, they say it takes a long time to build a reputation, but only 30 seconds to ruin it. So what is it that your job seekers, those future employees, what is their takeaway when they go to the front door of working for your company? So the bottom line is your brand is your culture. And what is it that actually makes up that employment brand? Well, it turns out it's a lot of different things. So certainly your company culture. And when I think about company culture, I always equate it to employee opinions. And it's not the opinions that they necessarily say around the office because they might be afraid of what people would hear. You know, certainly it could be the water cooler talk, if you will. But I like to think of it as, what do they say when they're at a barbecue away from their office and people ask them about, hey, how's your job going at whatever your company is? And it's the answers to those questions that really become the definition of your culture. If things are going really well, and that employee is aligned with your mission and your value and your goals, they're going to say really nice things about the company, and that person at the barbecue is going to walk away thinking, wow, that's a cool place to work. I should think about that, and they put that in the back of their head. You know, the other thing is certainly the candidate experience. One of the things, if you take anything else away from today's webinar as a recruiter, is I would highly encourage you to always get back to your job seekers. You know, one of the things that I see over and over and over again, especially within our recruiting platform, is everybody is so busy trying to fill jobs and really not thinking about what they should be doing for tomorrow. And when somebody's taken the time to apply for one of your jobs, you should really work it into your process that, you know what, maybe the first thing on a Monday, and I purposely say Monday because you don't want to do it on a Friday to tell somebody they didn't get a job that they applied for and ruin their weekend. So maybe early in the week you set up a reminder to spend a half hour going through and politely telling people that, hey, really appreciate you taking the time to apply for that job with us, and we didn't see it at this time, but we're going to keep your information on file. And if you get really good at technology, you can actually use that information to reduce your time bill in the future. But bring it back to what we're talking about today, that little act that you could do 30 minutes once a week will make a huge difference in terms of your overall brand from a recruiting point of view. And then lastly, of course, you have the corporate brand. And, you know, how is your company perceived in the marketplace? And, you know, one of the best experiences I've had with this at Jobvite was I was involved in helping Logitech roll out our platform around the world. And I was working with Lindsay Durham at the time. She was the global head of recruiting. And one of the things that they wanted to do as part of that global rollout was they wanted to really convey the new culture at Jobvite as opposed to, at Logitech, as opposed to the old one. And when most people, this is the story Lindsay told me, she said, when most people think about Logitech, they think of keyboards and mice and things like that, and that doesn't necessarily lead to the best employer brand when you're trying to recruit young and new talent and new blood into your organization. And in fact, Logitech itself was actually moving away, and in addition, I shouldn't say moving away, but in addition to still being good at keyboards and mice, they were doing innovative things like mobile music, and it became really, really important to, as they relaunched their recruiting system, that they get that message out and put it up on their career site. In fact, I highly suggest, either on a mobile device or desktop device, go check out careers.logitech.com and see what I'm talking about. They did a really, really nice job. So what are the most trusted resources when you're trying to build your brand? Well, Glassdoor did a survey, and it turns out that 52% of trusted resources actually turn out to be word of mouth from family and friends. So remember those marketing conversations I talked about earlier? Those are people, when people are looking for a job, they're going to remember those barbecue conversations much, much more than any other source when they're thinking about the brand or your brand at your company. The next biggest percentage is 14%, which is reviews from employees, not from recruiters, not from the CEO, but from people who are sharing their message and saying, you know, this is what it's like to work at the company. And then, you know, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't share that I think Glassdoor does a great job in terms of if you're going to work on your employment brand, is go check out what employees and previous job seekers and maybe even current job seekers are saying about your brand out on Glassdoor. You might be surprised, and it's certainly something you should take a look at. So how do you go about building your brand? Well, hopefully I convinced by now on the importance of it. So let's talk about how to do it. Now, I think in, you know, knowing where you are today in terms of the current state is really, really important, right? So if you agree with me, you should go to sites like Glassdoor. Some other ones are Career Bliss. A third one is Kununu. I hope I pronounced that the right way, Kununu. You know, check those sites out, see what's being said about your company, because that's your starting point. In any effective plan, you need to know where you're starting from. The next part is, let's tell your story. And you know what? People love a good story. Think about the TV show Mad Men, which is what this graphic's about. I don't know if you saw this episode, but this episode is a pitch that they were doing to Kodak on this whole carousel idea. But think about your favorite movie. I happen to love movies. I hate to say it, but I sometimes live my life through movies. I can remember certain quotes of movies that have always stuck me. It's because the story's so good. But when it comes to recruiting, your company has a story as well. And that story is the identity. It's what people see as your company. And it includes things like your mission, what it's like to work at your company. And I would also encourage you not to recycle that tired content like you see on those motivational posters from the 80s and 90s. You know, people canoeing or going up a mountain or whatever like that. You know, at Jobvite, this slide here shows you an example that, and this is true. If you were to come into our office at Jobvite, you would see that we're dog-friendly, we're fast-growing, we're an award-winning culture. And if you go to careers.jobvite.com, you'd see that same thing on our career site. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure you highlight any perks that are included. And, you know, here in Silicon Valley, people think about perks as, you know, commuting benefits and snacks and meals and how fun it is to work there. And those are all good. But you got to remember that even mentioning things like, hey, we have health care, you can earn time off, maybe you can volunteer. You know, there's lots of things that don't cost any money that your company can do to build culture. And you know, you might be so bold if your HR team has done the work to say things like, we pay the best. And I'll give you some examples of that a little bit later on. Or maybe you were voted the best place to work by a newspaper or some respected organization. But above all, what you want to do is make it your own and keep it real, because people are going to sniff out anything fake, and that's just going to shoot you in the foot as you move forward. So this next screen is an example from one of our customers, Schneider Electric. They're a global organization. And one of the things I love about these screenshots is take a look on the one on the right. They're using this Brady Bunch view of their employees, if you will. Sorry if my Brady Bunch things doesn't translate to some of the younger people. I'm showing my age. But those Brady Bunch hyperlinks are stories from employees about what it's like to work there and what makes it unique. You'll notice some other things on the page on the left, some links about how they feel about sustainability and other important elements as well to your brand. This next page is from our customer Prezi. One of the things that I love about their career site is they highlight the fact that they're in multiple locations. So maybe if you have the travel or adventure bug like I do, that would be really cool, because even though they're here in Northern California, they have other offices around the world, and that might give you an opportunity to travel. And then the other really neat thing is if you go to their job descriptions, they use their own presentation software to walk you through the job description, which is super effective as opposed to just reading some text. So that's what you can do, if you will, on the outside world. Let's talk about what you can do on the inside world. And the first step is finding your evangelists within your own organization. Who are the people that really love working at your company? Go identify them, get their story, and build your content from them, not from what you think they're going to say, but actually have them help you build that content. And I would also suggest that if you think you have a negative brand, don't be afraid to talk to your detractors. I've run customer success teams, service teams for multiple organizations. I'm a huge fan of the whole philosophy of net promoter scores, and a big part of net promoter is it's great to know who your promoters are, but the way that you can move the needle the biggest is actually going out and talking to your detractors and get what it is that's making them be negative towards your brand or your company or your product, and identify it and then address them accordingly. One of the things I've learned in my career is to work well cross-functionally. So, I've run sales teams. I ran my own company. I've run the customer success team at Jobvite. I've done projects at billion-dollar organizations where people told me things couldn't be done. And the way that I was successful in all of them is making sure you work across all the different departments well. And so one of the things as you go about this journey on building your brand is, number one, you want to build your plan. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is from Stephen Covey. You might remember one of his books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But one of those habits is begin with the end in mind. And, think about it. When you go on vacation, I mean, most people, at least, when they go on vacation, they don't just show up to the airport and figure out where they're going to go. They have a plan. They know where they're going to go, how long are they going to be there, where are they going to stay, what are some of the activities they're going to do. I will say it's been kind of fun to go on a vacation and not have that stuff planned, but in general, most people do have a plan when they go on vacation. Well, you need the same thing when you go out and start working on your employment brand. And once you have your plan, you need to go get buy-in from the executive team. It's, I'm sure that's not surprising to anybody, but if it doesn't start from the top down, you're gonna have a really tough fight on your hands. So you need to make sure that your plan gets buy-in from the executive team, and then once you have that, go ahead and start executing on your plan. And remember, if you're having problems with the executive team, remember how at the beginning of this presentation we talked about talent being your #1 asset? Well, your plan should reference that, and if you need any help with that, let us know at Jobvite. We've got lots of independent research that backs that up and shows you why talent is so important to any organization. The other thing you want to do is, once you have your assets in place, is you want to use multiple channels to spread the word. In fact, Netflix and Zappos are two really famous examples. If you're not familiar with them, shoot me a note. Whether it's on Twitter or my email is david@jobvite.com. I can point you to those resources, but they're really famous for being very public with their culture. I also have something, if you're interested in it, you can email me again about how one of our customers, SoundCloud, addressed one of its culture challenges and something that they did internally to change some things. So a tip there, a little teaser for you to make sure you're actually paying attention right now. Think social. So pay attention to your social channels. You can be sure that job seekers are looking there. Two really good examples I can point you to would be Starbucks and HomeAway. The handles there are at Starbucks Jobs and at HomeAway Jobs. Those two organizations do a really great job of interacting with job seekers and paying attention to their brand. And notice that their handles there are different than their corporate handles. So, one of the things that I've seen recruiting teams run into as a roadblock is the marketing team will say, yeah, recruiting's important and all that, but I really don't want you in on my channel. I want to have a different channel. So if you run into that, see if you can get them to buy into you having your own social channel and agree to the set of rules so that they don't get upset that you might ruin the brand somehow in terms of how to use that out in the social world. So let's talk about next steps. I love this next slide. That old saying of don't put the cart before the horse. One of the other things I learned in my professional services background is one of my favorite sayings is, and think about this, don't miss it, ready, fire, aim. It may take some time to build your brand is the takeaway here. So don't walk before you run. I guess we can go a long way on all the different, sayings that people have used another way. But I think what happens a lot when I talk with customers individually about this is that they get overwhelmed. They think the job's too big. And to give you one third saying to walk away with is the Chinese proverb that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So, think about that and don't get overwhelmed. And what I would encourage you to do that I learned from a mentor of mine is build the plan and then execute the plan. A good plan will include quantifiable metrics that can measure success along the way. So that's why, if you remember a little bit ago in the presentation, I said, understand where you are today. Glassdoor has a star rating system, so maybe today, if you were to go look up your brand on Glassdoor, maybe it has 3.5 stars, and so therefore your goal is within the next whatever period of time, right? Make it a SMART goal, make it measurable. Within the next 6 months, I want to make it from 3.5 stars to 4 stars or something like that. And then here are the things that you're going to do so that you can show that you've made progress, or maybe that you haven't made progress and that you need to try something different as well. But either way, you're going to know if what you're doing is working or not working. Start nice and easy. Find and budget even the smallest amount of time and keep at it. One of the things that I've been fascinated with is Twitter. I think people understand Facebook really well. They get that Facebook is your close family and friends, and it's really your closest, most closely held contacts that you have. And everybody seems to understand LinkedIn as your professional network. And Twitter is an amazing tool that helps you kind of build your personal brand on people that don't even know you. And it's not even about the number of followers you have. You'd be shocked at just knowing how far a tweet goes to people that aren't even following you because they're using search terms. So that's the reason I tell you that story is I got overwhelmed with Twitter when I first thought about it and how I was going to do it. But one of the things I do right now is I take literally just 5 or 10 minutes every day and do a little bit of something on Twitter, and I can see the needle moving in terms of what's going on with my use of Twitter. So you can do the same thing when it comes to employer brand. And then as this slide shows, think about some productivity tools that'll help you build your content. Whether it's Evernote or Notes or Pocket, those are all tools that you can use as you come across content that you want to reuse. So as you can tell, I'm super passionate about all this stuff. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and we have, like I said, a series of 3 more coming that'll be coming in the coming months. And with that, Claire, I guess we can put into any questions that have come in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. That was a great presentation. So it looks like we have a couple of questions coming into the question box, but just want to send out a reminder. This is the time to get all your questions answered about employment brands, and David has worked at Jobvite for a while, so he has some great insight into what we've done and what our customers have done to improve their brand. So one of the first questions that came in from a couple of people was, David, you mentioned there were a couple of similar sites to Glassdoor. Can you just repeat what those were?
Yeah, you bet. So Kununu is one of them, Kununu, and Career Bliss, all one word, are 2 other sites in addition to Glassdoor where you could go out and get some measurements on your brand.
Great. And just one note, Kununu is a German language site. So for the international companies, that'll be really helpful. But for the U.S. based, put it in your back pocket for when you do expand to worldwide domination. Okay. So Dustin had a question. What are your thoughts on Glassdoor? I know some of our attendees always have questions about responding to negative reviews, improving their reviews, all of that.
So, look, it goes back to what I've learned in moving Net Promoter Scores up is, it's sometimes really difficult to deal with negative pieces on anything really in your life. When I was up in Canada and I was leading this global sales team, we unfortunately laid off a lot of people, and I was shocked when I was Googling my name and I showed up on a site called badbosses.com or something like that, and it didn't feel good for sure to to get blamed for something that was a corporate mandate that just needed to be done. But the same thing is true with Glassdoor. I think burying your head in the sand isn't the right way to go. And the reality is the world is a social place. I mean, go out and look at airline sites on Twitter and how they get bashed, when something bad happens or, what have you. So, I would just say, embrace it, take a look at it, and address the negative parts. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. Even the best places in the world are going to do things that upset people, not hopefully intentionally from time to time. And so by not addressing it, I believe you're really making it worse. And Glassdoor can help you with those techniques in terms of how to respond and what's the best way to handle a certain type of situation.
Great. So Allison had a question. What kind of metrics would you use to measure improvements in employer brand or specifically brand sentiment?
Well, there's a few things I can think of, Allison. One is, number one, go to Glassdoor, see what your rating is today, just so you know where you are. And if you're lucky that you have a great rating, maybe your goal is to just say to maintain it at this level and that you don't want to see it go down, and understand how you got to that level. But that's one of them. Another great technique I've seen companies do, recruiters do, is do surveys of candidates, both the ones they hire and the ones that they don't hire, and understand maybe what their takeaways were about your company and how you can improve. The same thing is true on exit interviews when employees leave the organization. Well, what's making them leave, and making sure that the executive team understands those issues and knows that, okay, maybe that was unavoidable, but at least we know what's going on in the organization and why people are perceiving us or seeing us the way that they do.
Perfect. So we had a couple of questions about getting onto Twitter and understanding the social media networks. Alicia had a specific question about Twitter, but I want to kind of broaden it out. Do you have any, maybe even marketing resources that would be helpful to teach them about using Twitter, or do you just suggest jumping in and figuring it out there?
Well, one of the taglines we have at Jobvite right now is recruiting is marketing, and I think every recruiter would agree that they're in this sales type role, and they're selling the hiring manager on candidates that, hey, this is the right candidate for you to hire so that I can get this darn requisition closed and on to the next one. And of course, you're selling the candidate on the organization that this would be a good career move for them on why they should join, right? So every recruiter gets the fact that they're in the sales role. But what I see a lot of challenges around is that if you go back to this concept of a funnel and that recruiting is marketing, well, every good sales organization needs a good marketing organization to partner with it. In fact, just yesterday we did an all-hands meeting where our director of marketing got up and he shared the term smarketing, which I thought was really cool. I had never actually heard it before, but the idea was that sales and marketing have to work together to be successful. But when it comes to recruiting, we've seen that the best recruiting organizations are those that are doing the right marketing ahead of recruiting, right? You got to do the marketing in front of the sales that's going to need to be done both internally and externally. And Jobvite has a product called Jobvite Engage that's actually won 2 awards from HR Tech in different years. And I got to be a little candid, we were surprised on why that product wasn't being used by every single one of our customers. It was recognized by the industry as a great product, and people just kept thinking, well, no, I just need to focus on our ATS. The reason I tell you that story is that one of the things that we've learned at Jobvite is that recruiters may agree that recruiting is marketing, but they don't have the skills to actually do the marketing for them. And so one of the things where Jobvite's changed dramatically in the last year is we're willing to help you with that now. Now, granted, we're going to charge you a little bit of money to do that, but we have projects now where we can help you with your employment brand, whether it be a mobile experience on your career site, whether it be campaigns to do college or university recruiting. But we just realized that those skills weren't something that recruiters didn't always have. And so we felt like, well, we need to get out there and help them do that. And I can promise you the ROI on this stuff is super strong. So again, I would encourage you, if you need help on that marketing side, on building that brand, let us help you. We've done it. We've worked with great companies in learning from them, and we can help and turn that experience into work for you.
Absolutely. I know that, I don't know if David meant to do it on purpose, but this is a webinar series, and so we are going to be actually focusing on those web campaigns that some of our customers have actually created on their own and with our help. So you can actually see some real concrete examples of what you can do with Jobvite Engage or with any other sourcing platform, though obviously we prefer you use Jobvite. So moving on to some other questions. How do you recommend companies get ratings on Glassdoor and other similar sites? Do you just send it out to your employees? Do you have any other tactics?
Yeah, so one of the things you definitely want to do is encourage your employees to go out on Glassdoor, and hopefully you have good employees. Maybe you'll do a survey. Maybe you do an employee survey before suggesting that to kind of get a feel of where you are right now. Because if maybe maybe you guys have had a tough run at a certain time and maybe morale's down, and that's not the right time to go out and get employees to post what they believe on about your company on Glassdoor. So I guess my tactics there would be an employee survey, get them to kind of respond back to you on how are they feeling about your organization. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Net Promoter, and there's some methodology around that. I'd be happy to help anybody on how that works. Again, David at Jobvite.com if you want some examples of that. And do that survey and then measure again, right? Because parts of every plan is measuring as you go along, and find out where you are. And assuming that you've got mostly a positive feeling within your company, indicating a good culture, then I would maybe run a contest or do something to encourage your employees to go out and post on Glassdoor. And maybe for every posting that you put out there, you want it to be real. That's super important, right? So don't have them fluff it up. You don't want to say for a good one we'll give you whatever, and a bad one we won't, or something like that, right? But just encourage them to share their experience, and maybe they get put into a drawing for, something small. One of the things that we've done some research on, we have experts that have worked with, so many different people around this industry, has found is it really doesn't matter the size of the reward you get. It's more about the recognition and rewarding people for doing the things you want them to do. I mean, think about the Army, the armed forces, for God's sake. I mean, they give out, these pins. I don't want to minimize them, but, people put their whole lives on the line and earn these medals of valor that are so important. And it's not the value of the medal, but what the medal means, right? It's about being recognized. So that's the way you get people to react the way that you want them to for that kind of stuff.
Great. Stacy had a question. How should a small company attract employees, especially from outside of their immediate area?
Oh, I love that question. So another customer that I would point you to go check out is a customer of ours called Risk Management Solutions. Go to rms.com. And, one of the things that they did, they're a company that, I mean, Jobvite loves to brag, and I have to confess I'm guilty of it. Yes, we have the Twitters and the LinkedIns of the world and other really great brands. But what if I'm not that brand? And, RMS has done a great job on their career site. I'm just saying, you know what? The reason you'd come to work at our company is because we're a bunch of nerds. And if you're a nerd, then you belong here, and we want you to come here. And that goes back to being real about what your career site is. So again, think about what is the message you want to say to the world about your company and what it would be like to work there. Make it your own, right? Like, think about what Jobvite did with our bulldog. He's a real dog, by the way. I mean, the guy is more famous than I am. And think about, how to make your own message. And then get out there and share it. And again, by using products like Jobvite Engage, I know this sounds so self-serving, but these products really work, because think about what you do every day in your own life. When you think about going and doing something, what do? You open up a browser and you type in a search word, and all these technologies can be used for recruiting to come in and say, hey, I can create a landing page in Jobvite Engage that if you're looking for a certain role, when they type in those informations, that's going to get found through a search engine query and then land on your site. And be sure that even if you get it to land on your site, you got to do that other work on your brand, because before we track all this stuff at Jobvite, we know exactly what job seekers do. They land on your job description, and a lot of times they do not apply for the job right away. They go hop around to other parts of your career site, and then and even your company site, to look at the products that you have, and all sorts of different pages on your website. And then they come back if they like what they see and apply for the job. So don't be worried if you're small and you have a brand that nobody knows about yet. Just use things like search engine optimization to your benefit, because that's how the world works today.
Great. So kind of along the same lines, same but different, what suggestions do you have for building an employment brand for a company who recruits from multiple brand names under one roof?
Oh yeah, that's tough. One of the rules of marketing is know your audience. The worst thing you can do would be to spend, like, let's just say, the budget didn't matter. You had as much budget as you wanted. Claire's laughing because she knows she's got to deal with a budget, right? But let's just say that you didn't have a budget. You could spend as much money as you want. Well, even if you had a whole bunch of money and you threw that money marketing to the wrong audience, you're not going to get where you need to go. So I would say, if you have multiple brands, you really need to understand the audience. And do those brands, are they synergistic with each other? Is there some story that you can tell across all the brands? Or does each brand have its own story? And so without knowing a little bit more, it's a little bit hard for me to go a little bit further, but that's where I would look first, is think about how those brands interact with each other and know the audience for each one of those brands before you figure out your strategy.
Perfect. So once again, go to the question box if you have any questions. It looks like most of them have been answered in some shape or form, but as David said, He is active on Twitter, so you can tweet at him at dlahey, L-A-H-E-Y, and that's also, you can just look him up. It's on our website as well, or david@jobvite.com. To everyone that has been asking about the recording and the presentation slides, those will be sent to you after the webinar, both of them. So look for those, because I know David has covered a lot that isn't necessarily in the slides and vice versa. So it looks like, oh, so we have another question from Brenda. How do you suggest you respond to candidates who submitted a resume from a job fair? So too many candidates.
Great question, Brenda. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see recruiters make, is they take all this time and money to go to a career fair, and 9 times out of 10 what I see happen is they come back with a stack of resumes that never really get acted on. Maybe they get shared, or they go to a hiring manager and say, oh, look, why don't you go look through those? But what's really sad is those resumes never get turned into an electronic form. And so what we recommend, again, I'm stumping on the Jobvite product here, but we've solved this problem with Jobvite Engage. Think about, remember how I showed that slide about how job seekers are looking for if you're using modern technology or not for your organization? Well, what you can do with Jobvite Engage is create a landing page specific to the college recruiting that you're doing. So I went to UCLA. If I had just graduated from UCLA and you showed up at a college fair with an iPad that had a branded Bruin Bear on it, and I could just express some interest on the iPad there, what you would do is, instead of getting a resume from me, instead what you would do is you would have me fill out just a few short things on the iPad that would submit me as somebody who wants to be part of your talent pool at your organization, and you can then tag that entry with maybe this guy is a Java programmer, not that I am, but whatever it is that came up during that conversation, all that information then goes into Jobvite Engage, and there's so many benefits as a result of that. Number one, you don't end up with a stack of resumes. Number two, you can measure the success of your event, right? The recruiting event that you just went to, because you can go back to your boss and say, hey, look, I have all these people in a candidate or in a talent pool system now, and so I can measure how well we did at that event versus another event, and what was the cost of those events, et cetera, et cetera. But then in addition to it, because I have them electronically in the system, I can go market to that talent pool and use those keywords in ways to do campaigns that are meaningful. Have them request their resume to send it back to you in electronic format, because let's face it, you never really wanted it in the paper format anyway, right? So now you're saying, hey, and they had it, here's the ironic thing, they had it in an electronic format to start before they did it on the paper. So it's just a better flow, and it gives you better results and helps you build effective talent pools.
Perfect. So we just had one last question that I'll be able to handle, because Jeff wanted to know about pricing for Jobvite, and obviously this was not a product pitch, but obviously love some inquisitive people asking about our product. So after this webinar, just so all of you know, someone will reach out to you from Jobvite to see if there are any questions that you have about Jobvite, about our own strategies and tactics on employment branding, and anything else you could ask a question on. So look out for that, and I'm not going to give any details on pricing specifically. Number one, most importantly, I don't know them, but also our pricing is fairly specific to the number of employees you have, the number of seats that you would need, and there's a lot of different considerations. So for me to give you a number would just be plain lying, and I don't want to do that to you guys. But with that, I want to end this webinar a little bit early, so hopefully you guys can get to lunch or maybe a coffee break at the end of your day. So thank you very much to David for joining us and presenting a really great presentation, and thank you to all of you for joining us. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.